City Hospital was quiet at 2 a.m. Only the beeping sounds of machines and soft footsteps filled the empty halls. Nurse Mary Smith walked down the dark corridor, checking her patients one by one. Her white shoes made no sound on the shiny floor. Everyone at the hospital knew her as the perfect nurse. Always on time, always smiling, and always keeping perfect records of everything she did. Room 23 was her next stop. Inside lay Jane Brown, a sweet old lady who came to the hospital just 2 days ago for a simple leg surgery. Mary fixed her neat black hair in a bun and walked into the room with a warm smile. "How are you feeling tonight, Mrs. Brown?" she asked kindly. The old lady tried to answer, but could only manage a weak smile. She wasn't feeling well, but no one knew why. Mary checked all the machines around the bed and wrote everything down on her computer. According to her notes, everything was fine. But things weren't really fine at City Hospital. Young nurse Jenny Lee, who had started working nights just 3 months ago, was starting to notice strange things. Too many patients were getting sick for no reason, especially the ones Mary took care of. Jenny remembered how last week, Mr. Wilson from room 15 was getting better, but the day Mary took over his care, he suddenly got worse and died. The doctors couldn't explain why. That night, after everyone had gone home, Jenny stayed back. She felt scared, but knew she had to check something. She opened the hospital's computer and looked at old patient records. What she found made her hands shake. In the past 5 years, over 50 patients had died unexpectedly while under Mary's care. But the strange thing was, all the paperwork looked perfect. Too perfect. Like someone knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened. While Jenny was discovering these scary facts, Mrs. Brown's heart monitor started beeping loudly. Mary rushed in, looking calm, as if she was expecting this. She called for help. But by the time other nurses came running, Mrs. Brown was already gone. Mary wrote down everything that happened in perfect detail. How Mrs. Brown's heart suddenly stopped, how quickly the doctors came, and how they couldn't save her. Anyone reading her notes would think it was just bad luck. At the police station across town, Detective Sarah Chen was looking at her computer screen with tired eyes. Someone had sent her an email about strange deaths at City Hospital. Sarah wasn't just any detective. She became one after her own mother died at the same hospital 3 years ago. The doctors said it was normal, but Sarah never believed them. As Sarah read through the hospital records, she noticed something odd. All these unexpected deaths happened during quiet night shifts. But what really caught her attention were Mary's patient notes. In 20 years of nursing, Mary had never made a single mistake in her records. Every detail was written down perfectly every time. What Sarah didn't know was that in Mary's work locker, behind her spare uniform, there was a small red notebook. Inside, Mary had written down secret notes about all her patients, which medicines she gave them, how long it took them to die, and how to make each death look natural. She had been doing this for years, getting better at hiding her tracks each time. But even careful killers make mistakes, and Mary was about to make one that would ruin everything. While all this was happening, Jenny copied some files onto her phone with shaking hands. She had found something strange, something that didn't make sense. In Mrs. Brown's records, Mary had written about giving her medicine that the hospital didn't even have anymore. The hospital had stopped using that medicine 6 months ago, but Mary's records showed she used it last night. In the parking lot, a security camera recorded Jenny leaving the hospital at sunrise. She held her phone tightly, not knowing that her discovery would soon help Detective Sarah solve a mystery that had been hidden for years. At the same time, Mary was in room 31, smiling at her next patient, Mr. Roberts. She didn't know that her perfect world was about to fall apart, all because of one small mistake with an outdated medicine. Detective Sarah's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number with files attached. As she opened them, she had no idea she was about to uncover the biggest case of her career, a case that would reveal a killer who had been hiding behind a nurse's uniform for 20 long years. Detective Sarah's hands started shaking as she opened the files on her computer. The first thing she saw was a picture of Mary Smith receiving her Best Nurse of the Year award just last month. Her perfect smile and kind eyes made her look trustworthy. But Sarah had learned long ago that killers often wore the nicest masks. The next morning, Sarah walked into City Hospital wearing normal clothes, pretending to visit a sick friend. She wanted to watch Mary without being noticed. In the busy hallway, she saw Mary talking to a patient's family, holding their hands and comforting them about their father's sudden death. "Sometimes these things just happen," Mary said softly, her voice full of fake sadness. "We did everything we could." Meanwhile, Jenny Lee couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the strange medicine records she found. When she finally came to work that evening, she noticed something else weird. The security cameras in the medicine room were turned off every Tuesday night for exactly 1 hour. During Mary's shift, Jenny's heart started beating faster. When she realized that most of the unexpected deaths happened on Tuesday nights, that same night, Mr. Roberts in room 31 was feeling much worse. Mary had just given him his evening medicines, writing down every detail in her perfect notes. But what she didn't know was that Jenny was watching her from around the corner. Jenny saw Mary give Mr. Roberts an extra injection, one that wasn't written in any of the official records. Back at the police station, Sarah was connecting the dots. She found out that before coming to City Hospital, Mary had worked at 3 other hospitals in different cities. Each time she left, the number of unexpected deaths in those hospitals suddenly went down. But nobody had noticed because Mary was so careful about spreading out the deaths and moving to a new place before anyone got suspicious. Sarah decided to dig deeper into Mary's past. She discovered something shocking. 25 years ago, Mary's younger sister died in a hospital after a doctor made a mistake. The doctor was never punished because all the records showed he did everything right. This made Sarah wonder, was Mary killing patients to get revenge on the medical system that failed her sister? While Sarah was making these discoveries, Jenny was hiding in the hospital's record room, going through old files. She found something strange. Some of the patients' paper records didn't match what was in the computer. In the paper files, patients had allergies and health problems that disappeared in Mary's computer records. It looked like Mary was changing the digital records to hide the real reasons these people died. But Mary wasn't as perfect as she thought. That night, while updating Mr. Roberts' records, she made another mistake. She was so tired from working extra shifts that she forgot which medicines she had listed in her secret notebook. In the official record, she wrote that she gave Mr. Roberts a medicine at 9 p.m. But the security camera in the hallway, which was working that night, showed she was helping another patient at exactly that time. Unknown to Mary, there was someone else watching her too. Dr. Tom Parker, who had just started working at City Hospital, thought something was odd about how many of Mary's patients got worse instead of better. He started keeping his own secret notes, writing down everything he saw when Mary was around. That night, while Mary was busy with Mr. Roberts, Dr. Parker sneaked into the medicine room. Behind some boxes, he found empty medicine bottles, bottles of drugs that could kill someone if given in the wrong way. He quickly took pictures with his phone, not knowing that Mary was walking towards the medicine room at that very moment. At the same time, Detective Sarah was talking to an old nurse who used to work with Mary at one of the other hospitals. The nurse remembered something important. Every time a patient died unexpectedly, Mary would be the first to comfort the family, sometimes even before anyone knew the patient had died. It was like she knew death was coming before it happened. The pieces were starting to come together. But nobody knew that Mary had one more secret, bigger than all the others. In her apartment, hidden under her bed, was a large box filled with small items she had taken from each patient who died. A ring, a watch, a necklace. Each item had a date written on it, and there were hundreds of them. Mary called it her memory box, but it was really evidence of every murder she had committed over the past 20 years. As the night went on, Mr. Roberts' condition got worse and worse, but this time was different. Dr. Parker was watching everything Mary did, Jenny was secretly recording medicine room activities, and Detective Sarah was putting together all the evidence that would finally expose the killer, hiding behind a nurse's smile. Just as Mary was about to enter the medicine room, the hospital's fire alarm went off. Dr. Parker quickly shoved his phone in his pocket and pretended to be checking medicine supplies. Mary walked in, her face showing a flash of anger at finding someone in her private space, but she quickly covered it with her usual sweet smile. "Dr. Parker, I didn't expect anyone to be here so late," she said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold as ice. Dr. Parker's hands were sweating as he made up an excuse about checking emergency supplies. As he left the room, he didn't notice Mary watching him with suspicious eyes, or that his phone had accidentally started recording in his pocket. Meanwhile, Jenny was getting more scared every minute. She had found even more disturbing things in the old records. Every Tuesday night when the security cameras were off, large amounts of dangerous medicines went missing from the hospital supplies. But in Mary's perfect records, everything always added up correctly. Jenny started to wonder, was Mary taking these medicines to use on her patients? That same night, something unexpected happened. An old man was brought into the emergency room after a car crash. His name was Jack Wilson, and he had been a police officer before retiring. As Mary helped to treat him, she didn't know that this was Detective Sarah's father, or that Sarah had asked him to come to the hospital as a fake patient to watch Mary more closely. Mr. Roberts was getting worse by the hour. Mary had just finished giving him his special medicine, as she called it, in her secret notebook, when Dr. Parker walked past the room. He noticed something odd. The medicine bags connected to Mr. Roberts' arm had a slightly different color than usual. He quickly took a picture with his phone, not knowing that this would later become a crucial piece of evidence. Back at her desk, Detective Sarah received an interesting email. A nurse who worked with Mary at her first hospital 25 years ago remembered something important. The night Mary's sister died, Mary was working as a young nurse in training. She was the one who gave her sister the last medicines before she died, but those records had mysteriously disappeared. In another part of the hospital, Jenny made a scary discovery. She found an old box of medicine bottles in a forgotten storage room. All of them had labels showing they belonged to patients who had died under Mary's care. But the strange thing was, these medicines weren't the ones listed in the official records. Jenny quickly took pictures, her hand shaking so much she could barely hold her phone. While all this was happening, Jack Wilson, the undercover ex-police officer, was watching Mary carefully from his hospital bed. He noticed how she would sometimes write in her medical records before checking on patients, almost as if she knew what was going to happen to them before it actually did. That night, something went wrong with Mary's perfect plan. She was so busy watching Dr. Parker that she made a big mistake with Mr. Roberts' medicines. She wrote in her records that she gave him his medicine at 10 p.m., but Jack Wilson had seen her in a completely different part of the hospital at that time, talking on her phone in an empty stairwell. Unknown to Mary, that phone call was very important. She was talking to someone who worked at the company that made the hospital's computer system. This person had been helping her change patient records for years, but now the police were investigating that company for other crimes, and Mary's helper was getting nervous about getting caught. Detective Sarah was putting all these pieces together when she got another surprising piece of information. The security guard who turned off the cameras every Tuesday night had suddenly quit his job and disappeared. When Sarah checked his bank account, she found large deposits made every month, always on the day after a patient died under Mary's care. But the biggest shock was still to come. Late that night, while everyone was focused on Mr. Roberts getting worse, something very unexpected happened in room 105. Jack Wilson, Sarah's father, who was pretending to be a car crash victim, found something hidden in his bedside table, a small bottle of clear liquid that wasn't supposed to be there. Just as he was about to call his daughter, he felt a hand on his shoulder. When he turned around, Mary was standing there, still smiling her perfect smile. What Mary didn't know was that at that exact moment, 3 different people were about to expose her secrets. Dr. Parker was listening to the accidental recording on his phone. Jenny was sending her pictures to Detective Sarah, and the nervous computer helper was writing a confession email. The perfect nurse's world was about to fall apart in ways she never expected. "It's such a shame you had to be so curious, Mr. Wilson," Mary said softly, closing the door behind her. But Jack Wilson wasn't scared. In fact, he smiled. "You're right, Mary, but I'm not the only curious one tonight." He pressed a small button on his hospital gown, a hidden microphone that was recording everything. At that exact moment, Mr. Roberts started having severe breathing problems. In room 31, all available nurses and doctors rushed to help him, leaving Mary alone with Jack. This was her chance, she thought. But for the first time in 20 years, things weren't going according to her perfect plan. Jenny, who was supposed to be helping with Mr. Roberts, was actually hiding in the security room. She had finally figured out how to recover deleted camera footage from past Tuesday nights. What she saw made her gasp. Mary had been mixing strange medicines in the medicine room when she thought nobody was watching. Meanwhile, Dr. Parker was sitting in his office, listening to the accidental recording from his phone. His face went pale when he heard Mary's voice in the medicine room after he left. "Stupid doctor, getting too close. He'll have to be next." There was also the sound of pills being crushed and liquid being mixed. Dr. Parker's hands shook as he forwarded the recording to Detective Sarah. Sarah was driving to the hospital as fast as she could. The computer helper, who had been working with Mary, had just sent her a long email explaining everything. For years, he had helped Mary hack into the hospital system to change patient records. He even told Sarah about a secret code Mary used in her records. When she wrote routine check, it really meant she had given a patient her deadly medicine mix. Back in room 105, Mary was getting ready to give Jack his special medicine, but when she reached into her pocket, she couldn't find her extra bottle of clear liquid. "Looking for this?" Jack asked, holding up the bottle she had hidden in his bedside table. Before Mary could grab it, the bottle slipped from Jack's hand and shattered on the floor. Mary's perfect smile finally cracked. "You don't understand," she said, her voice changing from sweet to angry. "They deserve it. All of them. Just like that doctor who killed my sister deserved it." She didn't notice that the broken bottle had cut her hand, leaving drops of blood on her white uniform. Just then, both their phones buzzed with an emergency alert. Mr. Roberts had died, but not the way Mary planned. Dr. Parker had secretly given him a medicine that would protect him from Mary's poison. The cause of death would now show exactly what Mary had been giving him. Proof that she was a killer. Jenny was still in the security room when she found something even more shocking. The camera footage showed Mary talking to someone else in the medicine room last Tuesday, another nurse who looked exactly like her. Could Mary have a twin sister who everyone thought was dead? In the hospital's basement, Detective Sarah had just discovered a hidden room. Inside were hundreds of empty medicine bottles, all wiped clean of fingerprints. But Mary had made one small mistake. She had written dates on the bottom of each bottle in her perfect handwriting, matching the dates of patient deaths. Suddenly, the hospital's power went out. Emergency lights came on, casting strange shadows everywhere. In room 105, Mary realized she was trapped. She could hear police sirens getting closer, but she had one last trick, a master key card that could access any room in the hospital. As Mary tried to escape through the dark hallways, she ran straight into someone who looked exactly like her. "Hello, sister," the other woman said. "Did you really think killing all those patients would bring me back?" Mary's face went white. She was seeing her dead twin sister. Or was she? At that moment, Dr. Parker found something in Mary's work locker that changed everything. A stack of old photos showing two identical nurses. The back of each photo had a name, Mary and Marie Smith, City Hospital Training Program, 1999. But according to all records, Marie had died 25 years ago. Detective Sarah's phone rang. It was the hospital's old head nurse from 1999. "There's something you need to know about the Smith twins," she said urgently. "The sister who died wasn't Marie. It was the real Mary. The one you know as Mary is actually Marie, who took her dead sister's identity." As police cars surrounded the hospital, the truth was finally coming out. But no one knew that the biggest twist was still to come, and it would change everything they thought they knew about the perfect nurse and her deadly secrets. In the dark hospital hallway, Mary, or rather Marie, stood frozen, staring at her dead sister. But something wasn't right. Under the emergency lights, she noticed that her sister's face looked slightly different than in her memories. Detective Sarah, who had just reached the floor, clicked on her flashlight and revealed the truth. It was Jenny, wearing makeup to look like Mary's twin. "We knew you'd try to escape during a power outage," Jenny said, her voice shaking but brave. "Because that's exactly what you did the night the real Mary died, isn't it?" Behind Jenny stood Jack Wilson, holding his phone, that had recorded everything Mary said in room 105. Meanwhile, Dr. Parker had found something else in Mary's locker, a small diary from 1999. The pages revealed a darker truth. Both sisters had been nurses, but Mary was the kind one. She had discovered that her twin sister Marie was hurting patients and had threatened to report her. That's when Marie decided her sister had to die. The old head nurse was still on the phone with Detective Sarah, telling the real story. The night Mary died, she wasn't a patient. She was working. Marie gave her poisoned coffee during their night shift. Then she switched their ID badges and told everyone she was Mary. The real Mary died wearing Marie's badge, so everyone thought Marie was the one who died. In the hospital's computer room, the IT helper was showing Jenny something strange on the screens. Every time Mary, now known to be Marie, had changed a patient's records, the system had secretly kept a backup. He had helped her delete the regular files, but didn't know about these hidden copies. Now they had proof of every change she had made over 20 years. Suddenly, the emergency lights showed another figure at the end of the hallway, a woman who looked exactly like Marie and Jenny's makeup. But this time, it wasn't a trick. "Hello, Marie," the woman said softly. "Remember me? Your sister's best friend from nursing school? The one who knew you switched places?" Marie's face went pale. Linda Carter, her sister's friend, had been watching her all these years, gathering evidence. She had been the one sending anonymous tips to Detective Sarah. She had even helped Jenny perfect her disguise as the dead twin. But Marie wasn't finished yet. She pulled out a small remote control from her pocket. "If I press this button," she said with her perfect smile, "every computer in the hospital will be wiped clean. No records, no proof, no evidence." What she didn't know was that Mr. Roberts, before his fake death, had switched her remote with a fake one. The truth about Mr. Roberts came out too. He wasn't just another patient. He was a retired FBI agent who specialized in catching medical killers. The medicine Dr. Parker gave him hadn't just protected him from Marie's poison, it had turned his blood into evidence, changing color to prove which poison was used. In the basement, Detective Sarah found Marie's biggest secret. Behind a false wall was a small room filled with nurses' uniforms and ID badges from different hospitals. Each one had Marie's picture, but different names. She hadn't just worked at 3 other hospitals. She had worked at 12, using fake identities each time. The hospital's backup generator finally kicked in, flooding the hallways with bright light. Marie looked around, realizing she was surrounded. Jenny, Jack, Dr. Parker, Linda, and Detective Sarah all had evidence against her. But she still had one last card to play. "Check the cameras in room 302, Marie said calmly. Everyone rushed to the security room, leaving only Jack Wilson guarding her. On the screen, they saw an elderly patient sleeping peacefully. "I gave her something special an hour ago," Marie smiled. "Only I know how to save her." But Marie had made her final mistake. The patient in room 302 wasn't really sleeping. She was Detective Sarah's mother, who had checked herself in that morning, and she was wearing a special patch that detected and neutralized any poison in her system. As police officers finally reached the floor, ready to arrest Marie, Detective Sarah's phone buzzed with one more message. It was from Mary's old college roommate, who had just found a box of letters in her attic. The letters revealed the darkest secret of all. Marie hadn't acted alone all these years. There was someone else, someone still free, who had helped her become the perfect killer. And that person was much closer than anyone realized. As Marie was being handcuffed, Detective Sarah opened the newly discovered letters. Her hands started trembling as she read them. They were love letters between Marie and someone who signed only as Chief. The last letter was dated just 1 week ago. In the security room, Jenny was going through years of security footage when she noticed something odd. Every time a patient died under Marie's care, the hospital's chief of medicine, Dr. James Collins, had been in the building. Even on his days off, he was the one person who could access all records without anyone asking questions. Dr. Parker suddenly remembered something important. Last month, he had seen Dr. Collins and Marie having a heated argument in the parking lot. At the time, he thought it was about hospital work. Now, he realized Marie had been saying, "You promised to protect me, just like you did 20 years ago." The pieces started coming together. 20 years ago, Dr. Collins had been a young doctor when Mary and Marie were nurse trainees. He had fallen in love with Marie and helped her take over Mary's identity. After the murder, he was the one who created her perfect paperwork trail. Meanwhile, in room 302, Detective Sarah's mother pretended to wake up confused. "Dr. Collins," she said weakly, "why are you giving me medicine? Nurse Mary already gave me my pills." Dr. Collins froze with a syringe in his hand. He had come to finish what Marie started. Jack Wilson, who was still guarding Marie, saw Dr. Collins on the security camera entering room 302. But when he turned to warn the others, Marie surprised him. Despite being handcuffed, she pulled out a hidden key from her hair and tried to escape. The key had Chief's office written on it. Linda Carter, Mary's old friend, finally revealed her biggest secret. She had been working as a cleaner at every hospital where Marie worked, following her in disguise for 20 years. She had pictures of Dr. Collins visiting Marie at each hospital, always just before she moved to a new place with a new identity. Jenny made another shocking discovery in the computer records. Dr. Collins had been paying large sums of money to people at each hospital, security guards, computer technicians, and even some doctors. They were all part of his network, helping Marie kill patients and cover her tracks. In room 302, just as Dr. Collins was about to inject Detective Sarah's mother, the door burst open. But it wasn't the police. It was Tom Green, the hospital janitor. "Hello, James," he said, putting down his mop. "Remember me? I was the detective who almost caught you 20 years ago. I've been waiting for this moment." The truth about Tom Green shocked everyone. He was actually a retired detective who had investigated Mary's death years ago. He had always suspected Dr. Collins but couldn't prove it. So he took a job as a janitor, watching and waiting for 20 years, building a case against both Collins and Marie. Back in the hallway, Marie had managed to slip away from Jack Wilson. She ran towards the stairs, heading for the hospital roof. What she didn't know was that Jenny had already figured out their escape plan. There was a helicopter scheduled to pick up medical supplies from the roof, but the pilot was actually Dr. Collins' brother. Detective Sarah rushed to the roof, leaving others to handle Dr. Collins. On the roof, she found Marie standing near the edge, holding an old photo. It showed 3 people, Marie, Mary, and Dr. Collins, back in nursing school. But there was something about the photo that didn't make sense. "Look closely, Detective," Marie said, her perfect smile finally breaking. "Look at Dr. Collins' hand in the photo." Sarah squinted in the dim light and saw something that changed everything. A small tattoo that proved this wasn't just about love or murder. It was about something much bigger, something that had started long before Mary's death. The helicopter's lights appeared in the distance as police sirens wailed below. But the biggest secret was still hidden in that old photo, and it would reveal a conspiracy bigger than anyone had imagined. The tattoo on Dr. Collins' hand in the old photo was a small snake wrapped around a pill, the exact same symbol found on all the deadly medicine bottles in Marie's hidden room. But this wasn't just any symbol. Detective Sarah had seen it before in her mother's old medical books. It was the mark of a secret group called the Healers, doctors who believed they had the right to decide who lived or died. Down in room 302, Tom Green had Dr. Collins cornered. "You didn't recognize me, did you?" Tom smiled. "I changed my face with surgery to look different, but 20 years ago, I was there when your group killed my wife in another hospital. She was a nurse who discovered your secret." Jenny was still digging through computer files when she found something terrifying. Every hospital where Marie had worked had the same pattern. Not just unexpected deaths, but also mysterious recoveries. Some very sick patients suddenly got better after special treatments from Dr. Collins. He wasn't just helping Marie kill people, he was testing new, illegal medicines on patients. Dr. Parker ran into his office to check something. He pulled out an old medical journal, and there it was, a paper by Dr. Collins about miracle recoveries in terminal patients. The paper had been rejected because nobody believed his results. Now Dr. Parker understood. Collins had been using dying patients to test dangerous new drugs created by the healers. On the roof, Marie was still holding the old photo when the helicopter got closer. "You don't understand," she told Sarah. "We're not killers. We're selected. The healers chose us in nursing school. Mary was chosen too, but she was weak. She wanted to report us when she found out what we were doing. Suddenly, Linda Carter burst onto the roof. "That's not true!" she shouted over the helicopter noise. "Mary wasn't weak. She was brave. She found out the healers were using poor patients as test subjects. That's why they had her killed." Meanwhile, Jack Wilson had discovered something in Marie's locker that changed everything. Behind her notebook was a letter from the healers, dated 1 month ago. It said, "Sister Marie, Dr. Collins has failed us. He's become careless. You know what must be done." In the security room, Jenny gasped as she watched old footage. Every time a patient died, Dr. Collins had been there, not to help Marie, but to make sure she followed the healer's orders. Marie wasn't in love with Collins. She was his handler, sent by the group to watch him. Detective Sarah's mother had been recording everything in room 302 with a hidden camera in her hospital gown. Dr. Collins, now trapped, started talking. "You don't know how big this is. We're in every hospital, every medical school. We decide who deserves the new medicines, who lives, who dies." Tom Green pulled out his phone and showed Dr. Collins a live video feed. All across the city, police were raiding homes and offices. The Healers Network was being exposed. Their secret labs, hidden files, and membership lists, everything was being discovered. Back on the roof, the helicopter was almost there, but Marie wasn't looking at it anymore. She was staring at her phone, reading message after message from other healers being arrested. "It's over," she whispered, her perfect smile completely gone. But Sarah noticed something strange. Marie didn't look scared. She looked relieved. And then came the biggest twist of all. Marie slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out another photo. This one showed 3 people, Marie, Mary, and a baby. "Before they killed her," Marie said quietly, "Mary had a daughter. I hid her from the healers. She grew up not knowing anything about this." Marie looked straight at Detective Sarah. "Your mother isn't really sick, is she, Sarah? She's been helping you investigate, just like your real mother, my sister Mary, would have done." The helicopter searchlight lit up the roof as Sarah stood there, stunned. She wasn't just solving her grandmother's murder anymore. She was uncovering the truth about her own mother, her real identity, and a conspiracy that had shaped her entire life without her knowing it. But even this wasn't the final secret, because in the hospital basement, Jenny had just found a hidden computer that was still running. On its screen was a message that would reveal the most shocking twist of all, and the real reason why the healers had to be stopped tonight. Jenny's hands shook as she read the message on the hidden computer. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. All selected hospitals will receive the new treatment protocol. Attached was a list of 100 hospitals across the country, each with a healer member in charge of their medicine department. In room 302, Dr. Collins started laughing. "You're too late," he told Tom Green. "The new medicines are already in every hospital's emergency stock. By morning, thousands of patients will receive our special treatments, all approved by the health department thanks to our people inside." Detective Sarah, still on the roof with Marie, got an urgent call from Jenny. The truth was worse than they imagined. The healers weren't just killing selected patients. They were planning to test a new drug on thousands of people. The drug would make patients seem to get better at first, but later they would become dependent on more expensive medicines that only the healers could provide. "That's why I had to stop them," Marie suddenly said, tears in her eyes. "I wasn't killing people for fun. I was killing the test subjects to ruin their research data. Every patient I chose was already marked for their experiments." She pulled out a small notebook with names, all patients the healers had selected for testing. Down in the basement, Dr. Parker was checking the hospital's emergency medicine stock. The new treatment protocols were there, looking like normal medicines, but with a tiny snake and pill mark on each bottle. They were scheduled to be used starting tomorrow morning. Linda Carter's phone buzzed with a message from her real boss. She wasn't just Mary's friend. She was an FBI agent who had been tracking the healers for decades. "More agents are raiding their secret lab," she told Sarah over the radio. "But we need to stop these medicines from being used in all 100 hospitals before morning." Meanwhile, Jack Wilson had found something interesting in Marie's phone records. She had been sending coded messages to someone high up in the health department, someone who could help stop all the medicines from being used. But this person would only help if they received proof of what the healers were really doing. The helicopter was now hovering over the roof, its lights bright against the dark sky. But instead of Dr. Collins's brother, 2 FBI agents were inside. "We caught him at the airport," one agent shouted over the noise. He talked. "The healers have a master computer that controls everything, and it's hidden somewhere in this hospital." Jenny, still in the basement, noticed something odd about the hidden computer. The room's walls weren't right. They were too thick. "There's a space behind here," she called out to the others through her radio. When they broke through the wall, they found a large room filled with computers, files, and years of research data. But Dr. Collins just smiled when he heard this. "Check the time," he said calmly. It was 11:57 p.m. "In 3 minutes, everything on those computers will be deleted automatically. And without proof, you can't stop tomorrow's treatments. Thousands will receive our medicines before you can warn everyone." On the roof, Marie made a decision. She grabbed Sarah's radio and started talking rapidly. "Listen carefully. 20 years ago, I didn't just take Mary's identity. I also took something from the healers, their original research files. I hid copies everywhere, in case they ever caught me. Under the name Sarah Chen," Detective Sarah gasped. Marie had been using her name to hide evidence in police storage rooms across the country. That's why Sarah had felt drawn to investigating hospital deaths. Marie had left a trail for her to follow, knowing that someday the truth would need to come out. The clock hit 11:59 p.m. In the basement computer room, Jenny watched helplessly as files started deleting themselves. But then something unexpected happened. Tom Green stepped forward and pulled out an old floppy disk from his janitor uniform. "Looking for this?" he asked Dr. Collins. "I stole it the night you killed my wife. It has all your original research plans, and I made sure every major newspaper has a copy ready to publish at midnight." But even as things seemed to be ending, a new message appeared on the basement computer screen. It was from someone calling themselves the First Healer, and what it said made everyone realize that stopping the medicine shipments was only the beginning of their problems. The message from the First Healer read, "If our medicines are not used as planned, release Protocol 0. Dr. Collins's face turned white when he saw these words. For the first time, he looked truly scared. "What's Protocol 0? Detective Sarah demanded, now back in the basement with the others. Marie, who had come down from the roof with the FBI agents, spoke quietly. "They've put something in the hospital water systems. If they can't test their new medicines, they'll make everyone sick instead. Then hospitals will have to use their treatments to save lives." Jenny quickly checked the hospital's maintenance plans. The water tank on the roof had been serviced yesterday by a company she'd never heard of. When she searched the company's name, it was registered to someone with a small snake and pill tattoo in their ID photo. Dr. Parker remembered something important. Earlier that week, he had seen workers installing new water filters in every hospital room. "They're not filters," Marie explained. "They're containers holding chemicals that will be released into the water at midnight if we don't stop them." Tom Green pulled out his janitor's keys. "The main water control room is in sub-basement 3, he said. "But be careful. The healers always have a backup plan." He was right. When they reached the control room door, they found 2 men in maintenance uniforms standing guard. While the FBI agents dealt with the guards, Jack Wilson noticed something strange about the walls. "These pipes don't match the building plans," he said, pointing to some new-looking tubes running alongside the water mains. Dr. Collins laughed from where he was being held. "You can't stop it. The chemicals are already in those pipes waiting to be released." But Linda Carter had an idea. She hadn't just been watching Marie all these years. She had been studying the healer's methods. "They always use the same failsafe," she said. "There has to be a way to manually stop it in case one of their own people was in the hospital." Detective Sarah's mother called down from room 302. During her stay, she had noticed the maintenance workers typing a code into their phones every time they installed a new filter. She had memorized the numbers, not knowing how important they would be. Jenny ran to the hidden computer room and found a program labeled Water System Override. When she typed in the code, a map appeared showing all 100 targeted hospitals, with City Hospital glowing red in the center. They had 5 minutes until midnight. Marie stepped forward. "I know how they think," she said. "The override won't be just one code. The first healer would have made it more complicated." She was right. They also needed a fingerprint scan from someone with authority, someone like the chief of medicine. Dr. Collins refused to help at first, but then Tom Green showed him something on his phone. Pictures of Collins's family at another hospital, one of the 100 on the list. "Your own daughter is working night shift there," Tom said quietly. "Still want to release those chemicals?" With 1 minute until midnight, they had Dr. Collins's fingerprint. But the system asked for one more thing, a retinal scan from an active member of the healers. Everyone turned to Marie. "I can't," she said. "They kicked me out years ago. It has to be a current member." That's when Jenny made a startling discovery. In the hospital staff records, there was one person whose eye scan was taken twice during their hiring process. Someone who had been helping the healers all along. Someone they never suspected. 30 seconds until midnight. The pipes started making strange noises as the chemicals began moving. They had one chance to stop Protocol 0 before it poisoned not just City Hospital, but 99 others across the country. And the only person who could do it was the last person they expected to be involved. Detective Sarah's phone rang. It was the FBI team at the healer's secret lab. They had found something that changed everything. A list of sleeper agents in hospitals everywhere. As Sarah read the names, she realized the person they needed was closer than they thought. Much closer. With 15 seconds left, the truth about the first healer was about to come out. And it would be the biggest shock of all. 10 seconds until midnight. Detective Sarah looked at the list of names again, her hands shaking. There, at the very top, was a name she knew well, Dr. Emily Parker, Dr. Parker's wife, and City Hospital's head nurse for the past 30 years. It was her all along. Marie whispered, "Emily Parker created the healers. She's the first healer." Suddenly, everyone remembered how Dr. Emily Parker had been at every hospital meeting, quietly taking notes. How she had access to every department, every record, every patient. Dr. Parker fell to his knees. "Emily's been gone all week at a medical conference," he said. But Jenny quickly checked the conference details. There was no conference. Emily Parker had been setting up Protocol 0 in other hospitals. 5 seconds left. The pipes were now shaking violently. That's when the elevator opened, and Emily Parker walked out calmly, still wearing her white nurse's uniform. "I wondered how long it would take you all to figure it out," she said with a kind smile that looked eerily like Marie's perfect smile. "Why?" Dr. Parker asked his wife, his voice breaking. Emily's eyes turned cold. "Because hospitals make mistakes. My mother died because of a wrong medicine. The healers started as a way to fix the system. But then we realized we could control it all." 3 seconds. Emily walked to the computer and everyone stepped back. "You think Marie was killing patients?" She laughed softly. "She was copying me. I taught her everything. But she became weak, just like her sister Mary. They both wanted to expose us. That's why they had to die." 2 seconds. "But Mary didn't die," Sarah said. "I'm living proof." Emily smiled again. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Sarah. Why do you think I hired your father as our security guard all those years ago? To keep you close, to watch you. You were my backup plan." 1 second. Emily reached for the computer, but instead of stopping Protocol 0, she pressed a different button. Suddenly, all the lights went out, except for the emergency exits. In the darkness, they heard her laugh. "You found one water system, but did you check the air vents?" Chaos broke out. Jenny screamed that the air system was releasing something. Dr. Parker ran to find his wife. Tom Green and Jack Wilson tried to secure the exits. Linda Carter called for backup. But Sarah noticed something odd. Marie was smiling. "Check my pocket," Marie whispered to Sarah. Inside was a small USB drive. Everything Emily ever did, every plan, every name, it's all here. I was never kicked out of the healers. I've been gathering evidence against Emily for 20 years, waiting for this moment. The emergency lights showed something amazing. The air vents weren't releasing chemicals. They were releasing a colored smoke that proved which vents had been tampered with. Marie had switched Emily's chemicals with harmless colored smoke months ago, Emily tried to run but found herself surrounded. The FBI had every exit covered. The other healers were already being arrested across the country. Her perfect plan had failed because of one thing she never considered. Marie hadn't turned against the healers. She had been working with the FBI all along. "I didn't kill those patients," Marie told Sarah quietly. "They were already dead, killed by Emily's experiments. I just changed the records to make it look like murders, to draw attention to the hospitals, to make you investigate." Dr. Parker found his wife's phone. In it was the real story. Emily had started the healers 40 years ago, using her position as a trusted nurse to build a network of doctors and nurses who believed they were helping improve medicine. Instead, she had created an empire of illegal drug testing and patient exploitation. The next day, newspapers across the country ran the story. Largest medical conspiracy in history uncovered. Emily Parker and the healers were finished. The hospitals were safe. Sarah finally knew the truth about her family. 1 month later, Sarah visited Marie in the witness protection program. "Was any of it real?" she asked. The mistakes in the records, the perfect smile, the twin sister story. Marie smiled. A real smile this time. "The only real mistake," she said, "was Emily's. She thought she could control everything, but she forgot the most important rule of nursing." She paused. "Sometimes the best medicine is the truth." In her new life, Marie now teaches medical ethics. Sarah continued solving crimes. Jenny became a hospital safety inspector. Dr. Parker started a patient protection program. And somewhere, in a small box in Sarah's office, sits an old photo of two sisters in nurse uniforms, their real smiles reminding her that the biggest mysteries can hide behind the simplest things, like a perfect medical record.